All right, here is the second part of the exotic comparisons between Tom Clancy's The Division 1 and The Division 2. And by the way, if you're new here and you want to, basically continue to gain Division content, hit the subscribe button. Not a big deal. You guys know exactly what to do. You know how it goes. But one thing that I love about The Division is we have these in-depth discussions. We've been talking about this game on this channel for years, and it's really exciting to see some of the things that we come up with. And I feel like our conversations really do resonate in the development side of things. We cause change when we take our time to look into a lot of the different core mechanics within this game. And even though Massive Ubisoft is most likely going to be working on some other Star Wars game, let's not be fooled. A lot of the experience that they've gained from releasing this game, gleaning stuff from the way gamers tick and the community, they're going to put it into their next game. It is inevitable. They are the same people, largely who have done these two games. I mean, yes, maybe with a change of staff, but core team is going to be moving into this Star Wars franchise, and they're taking a lot of the knowledge that we get to share from here. But there's also a benefit. They allow for us to use their games and, critique their games and stuff. So I guess it's a fair trade, however you want to look at it. Now let's look at some more exotic pieces with the Division 1. And sadly, I don't have, for some reason, a pair of Pharaoh's mask. This is they named a lot of the exotics according to bosses in this game, but for some strange reason, I think I may have deleted some of my others, and I don't have the mask anymore. But I do remember the Pharaoh's Oxygen Mask talent, and I do somewhat remember the Colonel Bliss holster talent perk as well. So I'm really sorry that I don't have those with me here, so we're just going to have to go a little bit offhand. If anybody remembers and I make a mistake on something, forgive me. It is basically trying to glean information from my head from years ago. So when we look at, say, the knee pads, the exotic knee pads, we only had the short bow knee pads, which are basically grenade based and very PvP oriented. It basically allowed for you to be able to have your grenade detonate very fast. So the short bow championship pads, the short championship pads, the fuse time on grenades is reduced by 0.2 seconds. So this was a very big deal. I mean, literally, your grenades could basically hit, teams of people, stumble them, bleed them, shock them, stop them, do whatever it is you wanted to. And even in PvE, you could use it for something really cool, but I think it was in PvP where these knee pads really did shine. So its own focus was, directed towards the PvP gameplay, and that's where it really did do a very good job. So I would say when it comes to design and implementation, it's actually a very decent one. And also the ability of major and minor attributes are actually pretty good. In fact, if you look at, some of the resistance mods that you got for your major attribute versus even your minor attribute versus what you got for your major attribute, that was actually pretty cool, the way that they structured the short bow knee pads. I would say this was a very good design. For only one knee pad in the whole game, I say this is definitely a winner. Something like this could be used in a Division 2, but implemented, with a little bit more because of the way we're limited to one exotic. So this particular talent may need a few more things to kind of make it quite unique. But then you come to the Division 2 and, with our knee pads, our exotic knee pads, I would say I have not necessarily been impressed as much. The Division 1 wins, in my opinion, when it comes to knee pads. So basically, you have the Sawyer's knee pads and you also have the Ninja Bike Messenger knee pads. Sawyer's knee pads basically says, you cannot be staggered by explosions. This is a nice perk, though. Don't get me wrong. This perk is really nice to have because you can basically walk into, barrages of all kinds of NPCs, but at what cost are you risking, not being able to be staggered by, explosives? So that's a big deal. Now, it increases your total weapon damage by 3% each second you're not moving. Stacks up to 10 until you start moving. All stacks are lost after you move. So it's also a cover-based mechanic as well, which can, it can be really nice because you need to stay in cover. But if you get hit by a grenade, then you basically don't move. You're just where you are. But there are other really fun knee pads in the game and fun sets that it really does provide a conundrum, and it's very situational in its use. So not a lot of builds really do leverage what this particular knee pad has to offer. The next one is the Ninja Bike Messenger backpack, performing a cover-to-cover Performing a cover-to-cover or vaulting reloads your weapon and grants 25% bonus armor for 5 seconds. If you guys watched one of my other videos on my specializations, where I think it was a firewall specialization that gave you a bonus for cover-to-cover, you can do a lot of cover-to-cover based builds, and in the game, you can do a lot of cover stuff with Overwatch and all of that. So I guess I can't really judge this nor dismiss it. It will still be on the table as to how far and how influential using, cover to cover can be depending on how you build. So I see room and I see a lot of potential here, but when it comes to slap and go, which is basically put on one exotic and that's all you get, Ninja Bike doesn't seem to be, very impressive if you kind of weigh it out. So again, I still think the short bow knee pads seem to have a stronger ground. Where the Ninja Bike Messenger Backpack will shine, in my opinion, is if they were to implement some level that allowed for you to rock multiple exotics. I think they could do it with another exotic, or maybe they could even do it with a brand set, where if you wear 2 pieces of that brand set, it allows for you to be able to use 2 exotic gear items or 2 exotic weapons. That could also be a good way for them to be able to implement something like that. In my last video, I mentioned it being perhaps, another exotic that could do that, but I think that's actually the case. And then finally, we're going to look at the holsters. Now, regarding holsters, the Division 2 wins because we had only one in the Division 1. It's not like I said, we're not doing a comparison of which one's better. We're just looking at, the way they work. And the Division 1 basically had the Colonel Bliss holster. And again, I sadly do not have any because I deleted it. That's how much they were basically insignificant. I'm not being facetious. I'm just being very honest that they were not impactful at all. At first, when Sentry's Call was really good, you could use your Colonel Bliss holster to really do some good work with it. But over time, they nerfed Sentry's Call. And so it was one of those things where, if you couldn't really synergize it with your build, then that holster did not necessarily make much sense for you, nor did it for your team. So that's how that particular holster fell out of utility by a lot of players. But then I think the developers basically saw those numbers and lost their freaking minds and dropped 3 exotic holsters, 2 of them being decent, one of them being absolutely phenomenal, a nightmare to bad guys, basically the waveform. And I think they really did a good job in the iterations. Now, the Dodge City Gunslinger holster was at the time when they were being really stingy. This would have been a very impressive holster. So basically, it has a talent called Quick Draw. While your pistol is holstered, gain a stacking buff every 0.3 seconds up to 100. When you swap to it, your first shot consumes a buff and deals 10% damage per stack. This deals headshot damage to everywhere you hit. Now, it was actually better, but they went ahead and nerfed it because apparently I think it was getting abused. I can't remember the original talent at first when it came out. But if I were to implement this, I would make it where your stack will one-shot any NPC. It doesn't matter what they are. Be they a robot, be they a warhound, be they any difficulty. If you get that 100% stack, there has to be a reason for you to actually whip out this weapon like a Western gunslinger and pow, anything it hits needs to disappear and consume that stack. That's how I would design something like this. I see a problem though in PvP, but hey, it's PvP. If you see a guy wielding the Dodge City Gunslinger holster, you know he's come here to not play with you. So you better watch out for that particular weapon. And if the user has a shield, it will basically, its goal is just to one tap destroy that shield and then transfer the remaining amount of damage to the player. Maybe the shield will probably be a 10% reduction, but at the same time, this holster had a good opportunity to be nuclear, but the development team basically shied away from that. I don't know why. And then Imperial Dynasty is one of my favorites. Basically, if you're in combat, it applies burn to the enemy closest to you within 20 meters. This was another thing that made the firewall specialization quite annoying. In my last video when I talked about firewall, I didn't mention this, but firewall was all about the burn, and a lot of people were not happy about the fire. A lot of people complain that PvP is not really fun in the division, and I'm like, I don't really know, but to me, that seems fun to have my enemies just walk close to me and start burning. This was really cool when the enemy NPCs were crazy, because if they came around you, they just caught in flames. and you can melt them down. But with the with the improvement of Eclipse Protocol, the Vow Mask, the Imperial Dynasty has now become kind of a stash item as well, but it's still decent to use. But now the waveform is basically on top of it. Basically, if you generate a stack of 3% skill damage on one of your skills every second, capping at 10 stacks, after 10 seconds at the cap, the stacks transfer to your other skill. The process then repeats ad infinitum. It goes on and on. And so that's what makes the waveform very impressive. You're basically gaining stacks and improving your skills as you swap back and forth. If, say, you have like the rigor gear set, this really does work and changes the dynamic of your team play. So if we were to look at all of this and evaluate it, I think we're starting to see that the Division 2 really does do a decent job and makes up for the fact that you can't really run multiple exotics at the same time. Only one exotic can really be a game changer for your build. And then finally, we look at masks. In the Division 1, we had the mask called the Pharaoh's Mask. And what it primarily did was it allowed for you to be able to still fire your weapon while you were on fire. Now, this is one thing that I've said in some of my other videos as we've been talking about these two games is core mechanics are very different in a sense. Yes, they're similar in most cases, but in the Division 1, when you were in flames, you could not fire your weapon. You had to quench the flames, which is very, in my opinion, realistic. I mean, I like that system. But in Division 2, you can still fire your weapon even though you're still in flames. Yes, your aim and all that is gone, but you can still blind fire as well. So the Pharaoh's Oxygen Mask, it's basically a mask that was actually tied to a particular boss. One of the best missions in this game, based on soundtrack and level design, pretty much, is Napalm Production Site, in my opinion, anyways. We can fight about that later. And the boss there is Joe Pharaoh, a cleaner boss. So that mask was named after him, and it was a huge landmark item in the game. We really loved that. Naming convention, and they brought the naming convention even to the Division 2. Just they haven't really been consistent with it. They use Coyote's mask, Ridgeway's chest piece, Sawyer's knee pads. But another thing too is the characters in Division 2 are not necessarily iconic. You know, Division 1 characters are basically 20 times better. That's just the truth. And then you have the Vile mask to kind of compete with that, which Vile is way better than anything that the Pharaoh's mask could give you. And the Coyote's mask is also pretty good. The only problem that a lot of people have had with it is inconsistency. So again, like I said, you see how far the game has come. You see where we're at now. I think we can say clearly a lot of the good things have been adopted into the Division 2. Yes, not exactly in some cases. And you and I know that if they give us the opportunity to rock 6 exotics, we're going to walk around the whole town and slap everybody. Now, maybe that's going to come down the road. I think maybe after year 3, right before the Division 3, and by the way, there'll be a Division 3. I know people are thinking there isn't going to be. They're probably going to give some expansions, and, at that time that the game is finally reaching end, we may get something of that nature. But you never know. Anyways, that's it for me. I appreciate you guys for joining in and just, basically walking through all of this with me. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you very much for your time and audience. And if you enjoy the content, you can subscribe, whatever it is you want to do. I appreciate you guys so much, and hopefully we'll see in another video. Peace.